Welcome to this World Satsanga held on the 20th of December 2023 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And as usual, I encourage you to see Kevin Moore's YouTube site, his YouTube channel, The Kevin Moore Show, and look at the rather interesting docu-series that he's got talking about different ways in which people channel and basically their different skill sets and the depth and detail that they go to. This month's lecture is about seeing beyond what is presented to us. So what I mean by this is that every day we are bombarded by news from different broadcasting companies, different countries, different locations around the world, and all of the things that we experience are based upon usually one direction and are rather unbalanced. And that can be a result of censorship, it can be a result of preference, it could be a result of maybe even the political posture of a broadcasting company and their alignment to a particular political party that's governing a country. And all this does basically is create an unbalanced view of what's happening around the world, or even what's happening within our particular country that we live in. So it's really easy for people to become extremely biased based upon the information that's broadcast to them and the viewpoint of individuals who are broadcasting that information. But a spiritual person can very easily become embroiled in this information as well. And it's quite easy to not recognise that there could be another side to the story, or even two or three sides or four sides to the story that all feed into the truth surrounding the story that's being told, or the information or the news that's being broadcast. So based upon that, what I would suggest is that spiritual individuals don't get involved in political discussions or ideological viewpoints that involve the potential to be misinformed or unbalanced because the information that they've received that's allowing them to create a judgment might not be detailed enough to allow them to fully understand their judgment and the way that they're going forwards in their thought processes. So from my perspective, the way forwards is to work above these different political postures, these different political viewpoints, and the news that's given to us in an unbiased way. Because if we go from one country to another country, the information is biased towards the political control of that particular country, and that's which they want to have released around the world. So if we I'm going to use the word ignore anything that is potentially biased, and by that I mean you can meditate upon it and get a feeling within yourself, use your intuition as to whether it's biased, then we can choose not to pay attention to it. Then we can choose to continue along a spiritual path of rising above the vagaries of humankind in its so-called civilized state at the moment, and work towards developing the self, being a good citizen, a good person, helping others where possible without the need for reward or thanks, but doing it from the centre of our heart, knowing that whatever we're doing, we're helping another soul navigate through their incarnation. Because navigating through our incarnations on the earth right now is proving to be a particularly difficult task for anybody, irrespective of whether they are paupers having to beg on the street, or whether they're billionaires who don't know what to do with their money, or whether they're spiritual aspirants who are focusing on having to exist within a material world, navigate around it, whilst focusing on what they want to be, which is connected to Source or God. So try to consider that the world that's happening around you, although it's real, is simply a version of reality that we can choose to engage in or not. And although the version of reality is what we collectively create together, and therefore it's only manifest in this particular way, because of the collective decision process that's happened both at an individual and a group level, we can choose to move above that and say, I'm going to work in this reality, I'm going to work on my commitments, I'm going to deliver my commitments, I'm going to address my responsibilities, I'm going to be responsible for my responsibilities. But I'm not going to become focused on the political issues surrounding the country that I live in or in any other part of the world. This does not stop you from contributing towards helping others who are struggling, such as charities or giving money to somebody on the street who's a beggar, or institutions or organisations that help children who are struggling to exist in a very difficult environment. It doesn't stop you from being charitable, but it means that you should do everything you do in a carefully considered, intuitive way, working in an enlightened way rather than a materialistic way. And in doing so, you change the position of yourself and the position of those around you, who see you as an example at first. They see you doing something, they wonder why you're doing it and why you're not being materialistic. But then they start to see that you're creating a difference to people's lives. Moreover, you're creating a difference to your own life, and you're becoming more joyful, more happy, more content, more centered. And when people see this, they recognize that material wealth, position, status, belongings, addictions to various different levels of display of wealth, or other things like sex or food or drugs or alcohol, are no longer important. Because what is important is staying centered, staying of service, helping others, helping ourselves stay centered, and being the good person, being the good example, showing how you can work in a focused way where the end goal is being of service to others and helping others and accruing evolution in the process. So rather than becoming embroiled in various different discussions and being involved in gossip, which is extremely karmic, it's the most powerful way of accruing karma that I know, start to operate above all of this and start to consider that you can, in a non-egotistical way, show how one can become grateful for being able to be incarnate in this particular body, in this particular location, in this particular era, and that you can make a difference by showing people how they can rise above the addictions and the low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions that surround being in a materialistic environment and in a controlling environment. So rather than let the environment control you, create your own level of control, which is being focused on source, focused on becoming self-realised and self-aware, and reconnected with who and what you are, your true energetic self, your higher self, whilst being incarnate. And if you can gain any increase in your communicative bandwidth with your true energetic self, you start to realise how immaterial all of these things that we used to focus on as being important around us, how people can work together if they collectively focus on the right thing. And they start to realise that in helping each other, they help themselves, and collectively everybody creates the potential to ascend the frequencies whilst in this particular incarnation. And in doing so, we show a very powerful message to everybody else around us that our level of contentment as a result of our thought processes and our way of negating the materialistic distractions and addictions is the way forwards for them as well, because we become happier and joyful, more content and more connected and centered. So consider these words. Think about what's really important. Is it important to support a certain political party, or focus on your connection, your meditation, to enable you to be connected to your higher self or source and become enlightened and move beyond these petty kindergarten-based thought processes that the vast majority of humankind allow themselves to interact with. Be the good example. Do everything based upon the lack of a need for reward. Do it in a non-egotistical way and exist above and beyond the vagaries of inharmonious or disharmonious human thought processes.
We had some questions left over from Nicole from November's Satsanga, so we're going to do those first, and then we're going to do some from Ulla, and then we'll go into the questions and answers that are live on this December Satsanga. So, question is our final exit point, because we were talking about termination junctures in the last Satsanga, but is our final exit point predetermined? In other words, if we decide that 81 years is a transition point, is that set in stone? Is the day also predetermined, or is it general? Can we influence the delay? Say if we are waiting for a family member to show up, or even push it back a few more years. How flexible is this, and what are the determining factors? We tend to have a termination juncture that's based upon how we want to experience the transition from being in the physical to the energetic again, and how it fits in. And although potentially we could delay it, or contract it so we can make it come earlier, in essence we have a plan that we can't see in the physical because we're too low frequency, that we've created before we enter into the incarnation, that means that we can leave an incarnation without accruing any evolutionary debt, that is downstream evolutionary debt, or create any downstream karma, for example. So when we create a termination juncture, we tend to agree with our guide and helpers, and the guide and helpers of those individuals who may be around us at the time, or may be assisting us at the time, and all those other individuals who are also incarnate, to be in that termination juncture at a particular point. So it is pretty much set in stone. It's difficult for us to see shall I say, the different combinations of existence that can happen, but in essence, everything comes to a single point where we can depart in the way we're supposed to depart, whether it's through illness, whether it's through accident, or whatever. So basically, it's what we create and what we decide, and how we want to leave, which is the determining factor. Next question: can we negotiate how we exit if we would like to be quick and painless rather than through disease or in our sleep? These are conversations we have with our essence to ease the time or manner of exit. How much influence do we have over these things? We choose it totally. So we can choose to go with suddenly, hence the sudden death syndrome, where there's no apparent reason for a particular demise of a body. Or we can go with disease, or we can go with accident, or we can go in all sorts of different ways. It depends upon us as to how we want to exit, and we can invoke that exit based upon the time we've said it as well. So yeah, we can choose quick and painless, we can choose disease, we can choose accident, we can choose sleep, we can choose all sorts of different ways. But that's what we've chosen prior to incarnation. Next question: do animals or pets take on certain diseases for us, or process for us when the ascension symptoms are difficult? Is this one of their gifts? Is that why they're here? Animals or pets are here to basically keep us company. And in keeping us company, we help them ascend. So as we work with them, they also evolve, basically. And it's quite common for um, animals that have worked with human beings and that have been loved by human beings and consistently loved by human beings to be able to evolve quite rapidly. And there are cases where those animals jump from the genre of sentience that is associated with the animal soul or the animal true energetic self to the human, or if the human is too great a jump, then they go to the genre of sentience that's in between the animal and the human. That's the usual jump. Going straight to the human is very, very rare. But they do take on some of our illnesses, and there's plenty of examples of animals that have taken on cancers, for instance, or other illnesses on behalf of their human uh, friends or colleagues. Let's call them that. So they can take on board our illnesses, and they have done. And I know certainly one or two people, certainly one, and I think another person as well, whose um, animal companion has taken on board their illness so they can continue to experience, learn, and evolve in their human body. Because there was an opportunity for them to benefit significantly. And in doing so, the animals also evolve in belief. They evolve by donating themselves in that particular way. Next question. I am certain that my son's cat chose him when he went to the Humane Society to look for a cat. He has been particularly attached to him from the start. Their love and bond is unmistakable, and he's not like that with anybody else. Is there a contract between them, or is it possible that he incarnated with my son before? It's possible he incarnated with your son before. It's also more likely that your son was the first human being that really showed love for him. And so there's a completely new bond created between that animal, the cat, and your son. So animals that are in rehoming centres, such as the RSPCA or the Humane Society in the US and other locations, they tend to lose their bond with human beings if they've been feral, for example, or they've been abandoned. But they sometimes seek to have new human contact. And I can remember certainly two of our cats that reconnected with the human, with the human genre of sentience through individuals such as myself and my late wife and even my current partners earlier. So in essence, they do reconnect with us. They do create a bond, and they trust us, totally. So there are instances where they come with us, or they decide to incarnate while we incarnate. But usually the bond is particularly based upon an individual's energy and evolutionary level, which they know, and they can see they know our energetic signature, so they can see who is going to connect with them on a deeper level than the average person would do. So yeah, it's quite obvious to me that this is particularly about the link between you and your son is something based upon that animal saw something in your son that it didn't see in anybody else. Okay, next question. Can all physical symptoms be reversed if we raise our frequency high enough? I have noticed that the hip issues that have plagued me for years on and off are disappearing, and I'm not getting any younger. I do get intuitive hits about how to deal with them, whether it's seeing a new practitioner or trying a new exercise. And that's always helpful, but it seems to be improving exponentially as I realize certain old patterns or release certain old patterns. Is it possible to have a clean and vibrant body after years of issues, even in our 60s, if we focus not only on the physical remedies, but, and in brackets, and perhaps more importantly, raising our frequencies or opening our chakras and therefore increasing the energy going into our energy templates? The short answer is yes. When we raise our frequencies, we become lighter. We no longer are affected by low frequency interactions such as with bacteria or viruses, and certainly we have the ability to stop things like cancers or other supposedly terminal illnesses, but we need to know we can do it, not just believe, but know we can do it. And if we feel we've had evidence, or we experience evidence such as you're experiencing, then we can in fact reverse everything. We can reverse the aging process of the body. It's just that we are indoctrinated by everybody, our parents, our teachers, our authority figures, our friends, our relatives, what we see around us, into the so-called fact that the body ages and therefore dies. But we can, should we have the frequency, control the longevity of the body, and we can make it young, perpetually young if we wanted to, although why we want to stay in the physical body is beyond me. But in essence, there are individuals who have done so. Babaji, who was the teacher of Lahiri Maharshi, who was in turn the teacher of Sri Yukteswar, who in turn was the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda, the founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship, was known to perpetuate his body in the youthful state, the elder teenage years state. So it's possible. And yogis around the world, they're known to have lived away from society, so they don't get confused by the material addictions that society gives us. And they come out once every few years and present themselves and talk to people that they've known, and they look as if they're still in their 20s or 30s, but they're 100 and something. This is because they're controlling their body through will and understanding how to perpetuate the body by just being high frequency and doing other high frequency or metaphysical practices. Next question, can you talk a little bit more about divine timing? I have heard that you say that's how extremely important it is, and that is why patience is vital. But is there any way to influence divine timing, or should we just accept it unconditionally? Why is it important to surrender to it? If we try to push something, we move out of let's call it the event space, or the event stream within the event space that leads to a particular event or aspect of experience associated with that event space that we've created. And if we try to push it, we move out of it. So it's a little bit like trying to open a series of doors in a building, and those series of doors are only open to us if the person with the key's there. Well, if we're there before the person with the key's there, we can't open the door. We get frustrated, we walk away. If we get there after the person with the key to the door's there, we get frustrated because the door's being opened and we miss it. So in effect, we are not there at the right time. So we need to be patient and start to be in the flow, so to speak, and start to notice within ourselves when the timing is right. We know inherently by intuition when it's the right time. And so we need to be in a state of beingness, and a state of patience, and a state of acceptance as to when that time is. And there's been many times when I've felt that the time is right for something, like starting a course, for example, a university course, or meeting somebody, or being with somebody, or doing something, and trying to progress it earlier than it should be only causes frustration and anxiety and depression. But if you're in the flow and you go with it when it's there, then all doors are open for you. You just walk through every door because the person who holds the key is always there when you're there. So just accept it unconditionally, and you'll always be in the flow, and you'll never be disappointed, and you'll always experience that which you're supposed to experience when you're supposed to experience it. Okay, next question, last one. Is it possible that even when we feel bad, both physically and emotionally, that we can still have a rich meditative experience, or does it always affect our ability to have a profound experience? Sometimes, if I feel awful, I figure, what's the point in doing this? And I can't feel anything. But I was doing it with a friend one day who can see around my body, and she was surprised how vibrant the colours were, despite of how I felt. She saw colours of swirls and hoops and blue light. I was surprised because I figured it would all be grey and dull. Can you explain this a bit more? I think it would shore me up to believe meditation works, even when I don't feel a thing. Basically, any meditation helps. The thing is that sometimes when we're in pain, it is difficult. If we have a painful hip or a painful shoulder or a painful back, um, or anything else like a cold, for instance, or any form of illness, it is difficult to focus when on meditation and difficult to detach. Now, a master, a well-seasoned yogi, will be able to move beyond the physical. That means that it doesn't matter whether the body's on fire; he will be able to meditate and experience the disconnection of the soul from the body and enter into samadhi, which is basically astral traveling. So it always does make a difference. If Even if you're feeling tired, although it's best not to be tired when you meditate, it's best to be focused and alert. You're better off meditating. So it raises the frequencies, and although physically you might not feel the difference straight away, you will do later. So if you feel rubbish, then if you meditate, give yourself a good hour to just relax and deepen the meditation. Although you might feel tired, that's the tiredness of the body catching up with the frequency that you're on. So although your friend in this instance was able to perceive the colors and the movement of the energies around you as a result of the energy templates benefiting from the increased shall we say, deliverance of energy from your chakras because you're meditating and therefore a higher frequency, which opens the chakras a bit more, then the energy templates become more vibrant, and that is illustrated in the waste product, which is the auric layers. Don't forget, the auric layers are a waste product of the metabolization of energy from the chakras to the specific energy templates that they're associated with. So what you're seeing there is not specifically the gross physical, but how your energy templates are responding to you being at a higher frequency when you're meditating. So look at the tiredness as being the body's catching up. It may have been low frequency and then it's been exposed to higher frequencies because of the meditation, and then it tries to catch up, and that makes it tired. So don't worry about being tired, just relax after meditation. But do observe yourself. Maybe you're feeling slight tingling in your body. Maybe you have slight pressure around the forehead, around the area where the spiritual or third eye is. Maybe you can see colors in your closed eye vision. Maybe your temperature changes. Look for things that aren't normal that you experienced before you started the meditation to how you feel during the meditation and how you feel after meditation. And you will always feel something different. Okay. Thank you for that. That's the questions from Nicole. I'm just going to go to the questions from Ulla now. Okay. Right. So these are our questions from last Satsanga. So it's a bit of a sort of refresh and let's see where we are right now. So the first one is, what is the percentage of backfill people as of December 2023? Will they be capped at 70% of the total population? Are we there yet? I'm seeing 58%. I can't remember if that's what we had last time, whether it's higher or lower, but that's where we are now. And I'm starting to feel that we will increase over the next 2 to 4 years, I'm being told, but it's going to level out. There has to be a certain number or certain percentage of individuals on the planet that aren't backfill in comparison to those that are backfill, because otherwise it'll affect the ability of those who are ascending or moving up the frequencies, who are of the genre of sentience that is classified as human, versus those that are the different genre of sentience, which are the backfill souls. So there will be a cap of some sort. It'll be around 70% in terms of the percentage of backfill people compared to the standard genre of human souls. But beyond that, I'm not seeing it. It may get to 72, but not much. That's what I'm seeing now. So next question, are the hybrid children and ADHD and or autism children part of the 12%, eventually 24% of higher frequency individuals that will balance the backfill people amongst us? The answer is yes. And actually they will more than balance because they're a different, slightly different genre of frequency. But although they're the same genre of soul, their bodies are different frequential set, and therefore their connectivity, their communicative bandwidth is is higher than the average individual. Not the average individual as a backfill, but the average individual who's got the genre of sentience that is classified as being the human soul. So they will be. I'm being shown they make a difference. It's like rather than being 1 to 1, it's like 1.2, 1.25, sometimes 1.5 to 1. So they can make a, depending upon who they are, they can make a 50% difference in the frequencies around them compared to somebody who is the average soul who's immersed in their body. So they will help maintain the balance of those who are ascending versus the frequencies of those who are classified as the backfill souls. Next question: how does ADHD and autism affect their spiritual awakening? You said autistics have half hybrid energy sets. Do ADHD have a full hybrid energy set? No, because in essence, autistics are at a higher communicative bandwidth, and actually so do ADHD souls. But the difference between ADHD souls is that they expect a lot more communication from those around them, whereas autism is they don't expect that; they just get on with it. But they're connected, and they're connected in more of an intuitive way rather than a direct way. So autism, what I would suggest, operates at a higher level because autism is a connection based upon clairsentience and their communicative bandwidth being wider. They naturally connect, and although they do struggle with being here, clearly they don't fit in with people. People take advantage of them because they're generally very trusting individuals, and they trust individuals that maybe they shouldn't do. But they're very open, and they connect in an automatic way. So that's the difference. Whereas the ADHD souls, they expect to have communication. They expect to have, for example, 12 channels of communication when they only get 5, maybe even more. Just come back from a workshop in Malaysia for the healing workshop, and we were working with them doing the psycho-spiritual reprogramming. And one of the things we were looking at was turning off some of the channels with children or people who've got ADHD to help them become more integrated with this particular incarnation, because having the extra channels is just causing confusion or anxiety and depression because they're not receiving the connectivity between other individuals. Now, clearly, if you put them all in the same room, if you put lots of ADHD people in the same room, they start connecting, and they connect on a telepathic or empathic level that we don't do. So when we communicate with them, we have to think and picture what we're saying to them when we're connecting with them, and that makes them connect with us better, and therefore they don't display the levels of frustration or boredom or even anger sometimes that they would normally do when they're around individuals who are basically absorbed in their incarnation and aren't thinking beyond their 5 physical senses. So in summary, autism is an automatically available function that they have, which is a higher communicative bandwidth that they just use without even thinking, and they're there all the time. Whereas the ADHD, they expect to have a level of communicative bandwidth based upon channels, for example, and it could be 12, it could be more, it could be 20. Some of them come with maybe even 50 different channels, which makes it really, really, really difficult for them when they're only getting basically 10% of their communication channels, which is the physical side rather than the energetic side. So that's what they are, and in effect, will it help their awakening? If they're shown what they are, and it's explained to them in a robust educational way, it will help them become more aware from a physically conscious perspective, not a energetically or sentiently conscious perspective. So it will help them. And in essence, really, what we need to understand is they already are awakening. It's just that we're trying to shut them down or trying to categorize them. So we get in the way. And so we slow down their ability to be more awake than they are. Okay. So there's a bit more to this. Does that make it easier for them to wake up because they have access to higher frequencies? Well, I've just answered that. Or is it harder if they dim themselves down? It is harder, yes. So I've answered this part of the question. Some view their condition as superpower, while others think it's a severe disability when going to school, going to work, and getting things done according to the standard human way. I wouldn't call it a superpower. I would call it natural. It's just that we are all sedated. And that's the difference. When everybody is sedated, we think that the sedation is the norm. And those that are properly awake or have the capability of being properly awake are disabled in some way or mentally unstable. Try to think of it that way.
So I've had some questions from Nicole, which were previously sent to me, but I've already done the answers. So you'll have to wait until the recording to get the answers to those questions, because I thought there'd be a lot of questions today because it's the last one before Christmas. So I decided to do those. So they'll be at the start of the questions and answers recording, so that they'll be answered in order, receiving them. Okay, so we can go straight into these questions we've got here, which is Daniel's first. Okay, so Daniel's obviously been reading Beyond the Source 1. It says, Source Entity 2 refers to cast-outs. If an entity, aspect, soul is not performing to the standards of the group, either they have advanced beyond their group or they're fallen behind, they are cast out, so to speak. What happens to them? Do they receive additional training, such as training class or training school or guidance as they moved into a higher level, or create a higher level, or if they are moved to a lower performing level? Do we also receive training and development whilst we're here in the physical, in brackets, before we come into embodiment or when we leave embodiment? Well, for me to remember as far back as Beyond the Source 1 is quite a task, because that was written in 2012. But I seem to remember that what happened is that those entities were accepted by other groups. So if they were higher evolutionary level than the group they were in, they were cast out because they weren't part of the whole group. They would be accepted by another group who was of a similar or same evolutionary level. And that's the same for those who were cast out to a lower level, who hadn't kept up with the group. So they would be accepted by another group, again of similar or same evolutionary level. So you get this migration of entities from one group to another group based upon whether they were lagging behind it from an evolutionary perspective or going too far ahead from an evolutionary perspective, and they would go to another group that was similar or same to them. Okay, we in terms of our coaching here, is the only coaching we get is basically reflection, and that reflection is when we've finished an incarnation and we excuse me, and we communicate with our higher selves, our true energetic selves, and the guide and helpers to see how we have responded to the challenges associated with this particular incarnation, and basically the opportunity to fulfill the requirements or the goals associated with our life plan. So we look at these things, and we don't go into training as such. We go into reflection and to seeing how we could maybe do better next time, or whether we want to do it again next time, and trying to see if we can improve it. So the following question here is: are there training schools available for us as we evolve to higher levels? Again, no. It's all about how we interact and how we reflect upon what we've experienced ourselves in the so-called life review part of leaving the incarnation, where we discuss everything between ourselves, our higher self, the guide and helpers, and sometimes the other guide and helpers from those other entities who are interacting with us. This is in the AND dialogues, by the way, so it's all there to read if you want to read it. Okay, Jagdot's got a question: who constructed sentience in the origin? Well, that's in the book The Origin Speaks, and it's also part of the book I'm writing now. And in essence, there was a point in the existence when there was lots of other different levels of or volumes of sentience that were evolving as a function of standard or normal Darwinian evolution, as I call it, and they they were all seen as being potentially a dominant volume of sentience. One of those dominant volumes of sentience, or probably the most dominant volume of sentience, was actually event space, and it saw that there was a potential for another entity that would be better than it. Actually, entities that evolve as a function of Darwinian evolution of beings. So an entity is a division of sentience from a larger being or entity. But anyway, we'll stick with entity for the moment because it's something we can work with. And so event space changed event spaces to make sure that the origin became dominant, and that included its own loss of dominance. And to do that, it sort of gave itself, it gave the origin some of its own sentience as well to enable it to do that as well. So in essence, the standard Darwinian evolution plus the foresight of the origin, the foresight of the event space ensured that the origin became the dominant volume of sentience. Next question is how to differentiate between desire and calling. Calling a function of or the reason for our incarnation to serve a certain purpose. Oh, it's if something feels right. For example, there's a number of times throughout my life where I've felt that something just feels right to do it. It feels like it's the right time or the right experience or the right education or the right interaction with people. So it's really sort of listen to yourself, detach from the ego side of self, which is quite linear, and allow yourself to feel what your heart tells you to do. And basically it's intuitive. So if you feel that you want to do something intuitively, that's the calling. That's the feeling associated with fulfilling something associated with what might be part of your life plan, so to speak. So just feel within yourself if it feels right. If it feels right, it's part of your life plan, what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, another question from Daniel. It seems there is so much to learn in such a little time. It appears we are not doing as well as we could be doing. Things appear to be falling apart. It makes me feel sad to see such animosity and lack of cooperation. Antagonism, greed, willful, self-centered narcissism. It's easier to choose kindness and forgiveness. It seems that we could greatly influence the population mentally, physically, and spiritually. Are we working in the background to do this? And if not, why not? In doing what we're doing now and participating in this small number of individuals to understand more about the greater reality, we do affect those around us, because even though we're not, for want of a better word, directly teaching them, we are educating them through us being ourselves and us being a good example. So we are doing things in the background as a function of just being here. And when people start to see that we are happier with our existence, we're calmer, we are always smiling, and we're content, and we still maintain our responsibilities and want to maintain our responsibilities, then they'll start to follow one by one initially, and then we'll start to gain more individuals later as it becomes more, let's say, attractive to people who are of a higher frequency, who become drawn to other people who are of a higher frequency. So it'll be a slow progress, but it is happening. Specifically right now, when the Earth is so low in frequency, it's difficult for people to choose the right path, because it's so compelling to choose the wrong path. Remember, it's significantly harder to go up the frequencies as it is to go down the frequencies. Okay. Question from Ulla. Have you encountered Source Entity 12 in your odyssey in writing the current book, Beyond the Origin? What's it up to? I have, and I can't remember. It was some time ago. Basically, I feel that it's still working on helping the origin understand or populate the first level the first of the first level in the second group of 12 within the 12 groups of 12 levels. It's still mapping it out or helping it map out. But eventually, like everything else, it will enter into full communion with the origin. And so and that includes the Om as well. Every volume of sentience will eventually enter into full communion with the origin, because it needs to be to totally populate all of structured space to enable to move beyond it into non-structured space, which is beyond structured space. But right now it's doing what it was doing at the end of Beyond the Source 2, which is moved out. However, the book I'm writing now, it can actually be quite confusing for people, quite convoluted, because I'm being shown quite instantaneously different event spaces, and it's difficult for me to recognize where we are sometimes. And so the origin starts to speak in we will, we have, we want to types of language. And so it's already in another event space. It's already moved into non-structured space or nothingness, and so source entity 12 has already entered into full communion with the origin. It's just that from our linear perspective, we're still here, and from our linear perspective, the origin is still within the first groups of 12. It's difficult to get one's tongue around. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but I hope that answers the question. It's I think there's more. Actually, I think there might be more to come with Source Entity 12. Maybe even something more to do with Source Entity 13, which is Source Being 1. There might be some more to do with that as well. But I was working with Source Entity 12, or the communication with it and the origin on what Source Entity 12 was doing quite a long time ago. So it's not in the forefront of my mind, because what's in the forefront of my mind with the current work is actually quite mind bending. So I'm struggling to keep up with this bit, let alone what I've done about a year ago. So if I haven't fulfilled the answer to the questions, I'll apologize. Okay, next one's from Julia. I just got married last week. Congratulations to you. It's a wonderful institution, and if two souls get together and love each other, they can look after each other no matter what happens. Okay, I want to know, do two souls make a couple contract in spiritual level when they get married by law on earth? Is this kind of contract be signed already before we were born or not? Compare with parents, kids contract, is it stronger or less? Before we enter into incarnation, we also interact with other entities that are going to go into incarnation, along with the true and energetic selves of those entities. That includes those entities that are going to be our guide and helpers, or the entities that are going to help our guide right now, because we can change helpers depending upon what they've experienced with us in the past, and what they know of us in the past, and what we want to do in this particular incarnation. So I think the word contract is too strong a word. It's more of an understanding that we need to work together. And if that enters into a relationship that is intimate, because we need to work together at that level, then we do commit to do that. But we also commit to sometimes moving out of a relationship as well. So that's why people get divorced, or if, for example, one of the partners in the partnership leaves their incarnation early, so to speak. So we do understand each other, and we understand what we've got to do with each other, and that includes being the parents for certain children as well. So the whole thing is considered beforehand, not so much in a linear way. It's all understood in a holistic way, and we also understand who and what we're going to interact with further on down the event stream within the event space we're going to work with. So not so much a contract, but more of a desire to work with each other, to sometimes remove karmic links, or sometimes to help each other or assist each other in some work we have to do together. Next question from Ulla. If the soul isn't yet permanently or fully integrated into the human body until age 7, how does that impact early childhood diagnosis of ADHD or autism? It doesn't, because the full integration is to do with the maturity of the connection rather than the frequency of the body and how the soul can interact with the body and enable it to be able to communicate with others. So if you consider that the soul is connected to the potential for it to be incarnate at the point of conception, really, it's because the energy is already there and they're connected, and the soul will come and go as necessary to be able to do what it's doing and check various different things. And then as the physical body starts to grow, it spends more and more time in the body. But the energy supporting the potential for increased connectivity are always there. So in terms of being classified as autistic, which is simply another way of understanding that there's a more connected way of existing, and ADHD, which is more linear in so much as autism is an automatic function or subconscious function of connectivity, whereas ADHD, there's an expectation of having a number of different channels of connectivity above and beyond the 5 physical senses. So they're still there, but they're different. They're slightly different things, and it's all part of the construct, the energy templates associated with the gross physical, right to the point of conception, because the desire to experience certain levels of communication and connectivity are already there with the soul before it enters the body. Okay. Next question from Jim. Can we tell which people in our lives are shards, aspects, or backfill people? There's a very simple way, and that is based upon how they interact with us. If we are a higher frequency and they are a shard or a backfill person, they will find us annoying. They will probably find us that they won't be able to interact with us because we'll be a higher frequency and out of harmony with them. Also, shards and backfill people tend to be more absorbed in their incarnation and more self-centered than aspects or aspects that are slightly more evolved, so to speak. So just look for the possibility of how they're interacting with themselves and their environment and others. And if they're more self-centered, then they're more likely to be backfill people or shards. Don't forget, shards are a projection from us, from an aspect, and they have a significantly lower volume of sentience associated with them as a result. So they will be attracted to more materialistic things as well, in the same way that backfill people will. But backfill people are a different genre of soul, and again they don't have the same sentient quality or density that the human or what's classified as the human soul would be. So based upon that, you can tell because they don't think, behave, and act in a way which is considered to be sometimes civilized, let alone evolved. Okay. So the next one's from Daniel. When a soul begins the process of coming into embodiment and the sperm and egg unite, is there many entities, creators, guides who make the start of life as perfect and as efficient as it can be? As a follow-on question, when we are departing the physical, other than our individual guides, are there other higher beings to make sure the transition works well as can be expected? In brackets, we understand you've answered this in the past, but there may be some new information. There is a thought process that every soul incarnates in equality, but clearly the circumstance that they may incarnate into can be unequal, such as the educational level of their parents, the location that they live in, the ability to get the right education, the ability to be in contact with the right sorts of people, for example. So that there is shall I say, a desire by the guide and helpers and the source and the soul itself, along with the true entity itself, to make sure that the opportunities available to that soul are as best they can be. They are as perfect as they can be, given the circumstances that that soul is incarnated into. And in terms of moving out of the body, the answer is the guide and helpers always want us to transition in a seamless and efficient way. It's just that we sometimes get in the way based upon our belief systems, our thought systems, or what we think, or whether we actually recognize there's an afterlife, or actually or existence beyond the gross physical. And so souls can get attracted to being here. They can be addicted to being here and want to come back into a body ASAP. And so they can hang around looking to try and find other bodies that are temporarily unoccupied by the soul, if they're, for instance, partaking in drugs or alcohol. And so they can temporarily go into the bodies. So there are souls that hang around. There are souls that, because they want to hang around, they want to be part of the gross physical. There are souls that don't realize that their body's demised. And there are souls that pass reasonably seamlessly, and there are souls that pass very, very seamlessly. And there are souls that create an environment which they believe is where they are, based upon their education. So all of these things can happen and do happen, and the guide and helpers do their very, very best to ensure that these souls move back into what is the true reality as fast as possible. One more part of this: what more can we do to raise the consciousness of others and ourselves? Thank you so much for all you do for us. I would say, just be the good example. We can never educate people to be good or bad, because people have their own free will. And if they are good, that's their free will to be good. If they're bad, they want to be a criminal, it's their free will to be a criminal. But all we can do is be a good example. And there have been many cases of individuals who have been criminals who've turned a complete leaf over, and they've changed to be something completely different. And they've been an advocate of educating others not to go down the same road that they did. So in essence, it's about being the good example. And being the good example is the best educational force on this planet, rather than trying to actively educate somebody, because that creates resistance. Okay, another question from Ula. If a child has autism, which is a half hybrid, and ADHD, full hybrid, how does it affect their energy sets? It depends upon the frequency that they're at, is in terms of what they can work with. So autism is more, although it's a half hybrid, it's more open, so to speak. There's no logical process to the connectivity. It's just there. Whereas a full hybrid it's more logical. There's more channels of connectivity there. So it's really about the frequencies that they can interact with is the difference between the two types of bodies and the soul that becomes embodied within them. It's as simple as that. It might not be understandable, but it's the energies that they and the frequencies of the energies that they interact with as part of their body's makeup and the energy templates associated with their body that creates the potential to be totally automatically connected, even though they're a half a hybrid, or connected on certain levels, even though they're a full hybrid. Okay. So one from Bill here: how does knowledge of the greater reality aid in our life experiences and the ability to help others? It makes us look beyond the immediacy of where we are right now. If we consider the possibility that there is something beyond us, beyond the human being, and that the human being isn't the be all and end all. If we start to think, for example, that there's other entities that are incarnate in the rest of the physical universe, because there are, it's ridiculous to think not. So even that which is part of the gross physical is so significantly large, with a significant number of billions upon trillions of galaxies. If you had one location within each of those galaxies that can bear the same sort of incarnated vehicles as the human being, or something different, or something that's got the same qualities to allow a soul to enter into it, there will be trillions upon trillions of different civilizations out there. And some of those would be planet bound, and some of those would be capable of moving from one location to another using some form of technology. So in understanding this and understanding that we are perpetual, we start to detach from the physical. We're still able to deal with our responsibilities and be mature in how we deal with our responsibilities and how we interact with others and how we interact with circumstances that are created through interacting with others in the environment that they're in. And that makes us more mature and overall, and it makes us a teacher and an authority figure and somebody that people look up to, because we don't get involved with the nonsense. We don't get involved with the minute stuff that causes arguments. We stand back and we give a considered response. And giving a considered response, because we know that the human body is not what we are, that everything we do can potentially create a karmic link, a link with the gross physical, or the potential to evolve, is a great comfort to us. And so we show a level of calmness that others won't have. And that's how we help people we become the example. Jim's just asked, will there be peace in the new year? Not this new year. Maybe in 2025, around March, there will start to be peace, and start to be the start of the bottoming out of all the aggressive thought processes, and the start of the creation of, we need to start to look at ourselves in a completely different way. Daniel again, event space. Does it have its own individual consciousness? This seems monumental to pass the origin, all that it is. Wow, this is difficult to understand, I think. Event space is still sentient, but its sentience is associated with the capability of creating, let's call it, duplicate or parallel environments based upon the choices that sentient entities or beings make. So again, using the age-old example of getting off the bus or the train, we can either get out of the door, turn right, or turn left, and we can exit the station or the bus stop and interact with various different individuals depending if we go left or right. And there's those interactions that create the potential for other event spaces to be created, localized event spaces. But the event space does have its own sentience, and interesting enough, in the book I'm writing now, event space, along with everything else that's sentience, also enters into full communion with the origin to be able to move from occupying the volume of space that is structured space, which is an aberration in nothingness, to move out and start to be part of nothingness itself, be part of non-structured space. And so it even gives up its own individuality along with everything else to become part of the origin, to allow it, as part of the origin in full communion, to move into non-structured space. It's an interesting part of the book, and I find myself looping backwards and forwards, going over similar things further on down the text. I get a bit worried about that, because it seems to be that I'm going over the same subject, but there's always more information that comes out to make it more understandable. So I have to accept that I'm being led down this particular road with meaning. Okay. The one from Bill: the world is now in a bad place on many levels. What is our responsibility to mitigate the effects in our lives or that of others? Not become involved with it. Dolores Cannon had an interesting response to somebody when they were moaning about something in one of her lectures. And she said, best thing that you can do is forget it. That's not my reality, and therefore it shouldn't be your reality either. And that was quite an interesting response. Thing is to make your own reality a good reality, and that others will be attracted to being part of your reality. That's the way really way forwards. We've only got 10 minutes left looking at this, so I've got to work hard on these questions. Daniel, again, we're all interested in you and your work and your family. It is. Is it too personal to know that's what you all do it for the holy days? Probably working on books, and we're going to have a day away in over the New Year's Eve. We're going to move away from where we are and just have a couple of days off. That's all. But most of it's going to be quiet, with the one or two bits of work on books on their days. Next one's from Bill. How is it that Elon Musk or Thomas Edison, for example, have been able to discover breakthrough technologies to benefit of mankind? They're slightly higher frequency than everybody else, and they're connected. So the information is channeled down to them from their guide and helpers or other entities who are helping out. In some respects, they are on the autistic spectrum, because, and I think the autistic spectrum is something which is quite a generalization now, but basically they're a higher frequency, and therefore their communicative bandwidth is higher, and therefore it's easier for their guide and helpers and other entities that are working with them that they've previously agreed to work with, to pass down information that will allow them to create different inventions, if you want to call them that will benefit us in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Daniel, any comments on the weather changes, wars, and world events? The weather here is unusually warm. The weather here is unusually windy and cold. Basically, we are what we do affects the weather in terms of how we think, behave, and act. And so, if we start to think, behave, and act in a more mature way, we'll all start to affect the weather as well, and it stops from being rather sort of random. And as a function of that, it's we've also got lots of other changes happening, like changes in frequency affect the weather, definitely. And also we've got a magnetic pole shift about to happen, which will also affect the weather, because the magnetic poles will change over, and that's due to happen as well. So yeah, it's more than just world events. It's us with our own thinking, behaving, acting, causing higher or lower frequencies, and it's also how we work with the environment and how we pollute, and it's also a function of the natural things that happen with the earth. Oh, well, let's come back with the question on ADHD and autism. But if the child has both autism and ADHD, does your earlier answer still stand? My feeling right now is that there's a slight crossover, but in general, a child would be one or the other. The thing is that they would predominantly, for instance, if a child had got autism but also had a slight tendency, so it wasn't quite fully half hybrid, it would still have some level of linear connectivity, so to speak, associated with being a full hybrid, therefore more than one channel. That would the energies would still be the same, because they wouldn't specifically be half and half at all. There would be a tendency to be one or the other. Now, what I'm being told here is that mental science will try to categorize them as potentially being both, but that's a mistake, because there needs to be a lot of analysis to be able to understand which is the dominant side, because they're so close together anyway. It's difficult to understand. But you can still have somebody with autism who is frustrated because they're not interacting properly by the people around them. So although they might not have ADHD, they might just have autism, they might be considered to be strange, and that can cause an angry response as well. So my earlier answer still stands, basically, because we're not going to get a complete half and half. There'll be predominantly one, with maybe a little bit of crossover of the other. Okay. Yara, can one manifest, actualize, and inspire vision of how the world is to be, or does one want to, or does one become constricted to timeline due to others' projections? Wow, what a good question. One gets constricted by one's link to the physical, and that means that we feel that we're limited. So it's our own personal limitations that can potentially stop us from manifesting or actualizing what our reality should be. And that's basically it. So the timelines don't exist, there's just event spaces. We can create whatever we want to. It's only our limited thought processes which stop us from doing it. Okay. Good. Nick North and Daniel, I've only got 4 minutes left, so I've got to be quick. Source entities 2 to 12 have sent high entities to this physical world. Has source entity 1 sent souls to the other source entities 2 to 12 sources? What happened if they did? I'm just told they were simply in observation mode. From what I can see, and from my perspective, and I'm trying not to be to put our source entity on a pedestal, so to speak, there seems to be more integration and more complexity in how entities interact with each other within our source entity than other source entities. And as a function of that, the level of interaction with another entity that's sent from our source entity to the other source entities may well affect the function associated with how they're working. So from that perspective, they're just in observation mode. Okay, Yara again. Okay. How to pace oneself if sensitive to future or different event spaces, or is that an aspect of creation? Let me start again. How to pace oneself if sensitive to future, in brackets, different event spaces, or is it that an aspect of creation to hold the vision strongly in the current one? How to neither rush nor stagnate or freeze. Be in the moment, be in the now. How to differentiate between higher reality, inspiration, channeling, and brain dysfunction. Brain dysfunction is limiting thought process. So basically, don't consider that anything is a dysfunction, but consider it's a higher function, and that's the way to think of it. And the next question is, but aren't we incarnated in this time and circumstances to help? There are so many considerations that makes not getting involved questionable, despite having guidance to do just that. I think the thing is to be involved at an appropriate level. We can be involved and make a mess of it because we create resistance. It's always best to be the good example, and that's the most educational, efficient way to teach people, is to be the good example, and you'll find that you'll get followers. The moment you are the good example, you will get people following your thought processes. 1 or 2 at first, and it might take a long time, but in essence, it's about being here to show people how to be, not to tell them how to be, because to show them how to be allows them to use their free will to choose. To tell them stops them finding their free will. Okay, well, I think I've answered the questions there, and we've got less than a minute to go. So I'm going to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and send all my love to you all. And Namaste. Let's have a meditation based upon detachment from the distractions of the physical, where we may get involved in political discussion or political posturing or seeing things blindly or seeing things from one side only. So close your eyes, place your feet flat on the ground, and if you're in a straight backed chair, sit as straight as possible with your back straight and your neck in line with your back. Place your hands, palms uppermost on your upper thighs, where the upper legs meet the lower part of your body. And with your eyes closed, focus on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is positioned in the centre of the forehead, in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And I want you to consider that you're in a location somewhere the size of, say, a football pitch, whatever football pitch you have in your particular country. Sometimes it's significantly larger than others, depending upon where you are, or an auditorium of some sort, and that every square metre of space is full. There are people everywhere. As the people talk between themselves, you find that depending upon the way in which somebody presents something to somebody else, depending upon how knowledgeable they appear to be, or how compelling their argument might be, that their particular version of the truth is the truth, I want you to stand back from it. Because as you see this person or these people broadcasting their particular version in a particularly authoritative way, see how it creates a cascade effect, a tsunami, as it spreads around the auditorium or the football pitch that's full of people, gradually going from non-existence to attracting the attention of everybody there. Recognise that now people are starting to put their own viewpoint in place based upon their own thought processes. They're making judgments based upon lack of information, but based upon the broadcasted information of the one person who appeared to have authority for a small point in time. Now consider somebody else giving a counter-argument or another compelling argument that's maybe a counter-argument or is slightly different, but feeds upon that first broadcast. And see that again it slowly starts to take hold, and more people start to consider it to be a better alternative than the first one, and they start to pass the information on. And before long, again, the whole auditorium or football pitch is starting to consider the same thing. None of the information is based upon fact. It's based upon the word of one person, or it's based upon information that's being broadcast that is one-sided. Maybe there's two sides, maybe there's three sides, maybe there's four sides. Maybe there's a significant amount of depth associated with the information. Now rise above this auditorium. Allow yourself to float above them all. As you float above them all, consider that each individual is like a spark. As one spark lights up, it potentially ignites the rest, creating a particular colour around the auditorium based upon the acceptance of a certain piece of information which is being broadcast as an absolute truth. Then see another spark happen, another piece of information with a different angle being broadcast. A different part of the same information but from a different perspective. And again, as the information is broadcast and passed on, the auditorium slowly becomes a different colour of spark to the one previously broadcast. So you can see from being above, as you did from being part of it and embroiled within it, that in actuality there is 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 sides to the same piece of information. But depending upon the side that you're on, depends upon how many individuals decide is correct and continue to broadcast it. Now consider that there's a gap between the people on one side versus another. An authoritative figure on the left-hand side makes a statement that appears to have weight behind it, justification behind it, reality behind it, truth behind it. And again, that becomes broadcast, and all of the sparks associated with the other individuals in the auditorium start to light up and become one colour. Let's call it blue. On the other side of the division, the gap, somebody does a similar thing. And so another viewpoint is created that may be slowly accepted as being the truth, even though there's no foundation in it. And again, very slowly the information is broadcast, and the sparks that represent the different individuals in the auditorium start to change colour and flood the other side, the right-hand side. And so we have 2 different colours. The information on the right-hand side is reflected by the colour red, and the information on the left-hand side is reflected by the colour blue. In the middle, there is darkness. There is no connection between the 2. Now consider that somebody is in the middle and joins the 2 together. In the middle, there is a demarcation between one side and the other side. The middle is the balance between the 2. Somebody within the 2, within this middle part, offers both sides of the story, both sides of the information, and broadcasts it to both sides. And so the information from this individual who's seen both sides of the story starts to broadcast their information, and the colour changes on both sides, moving away from being red on one side and blue on the other to a colour in the middle, like green. So now that everybody in the auditorium is educated on both sides, and as a result, there is a neutral colour created, green. In our elevated state, rising above all of this auditorium and the people within it, represented by sparks, we can see that there's 2 sides, and that the 2 sides create a bigger picture, hence the change in colour. And so when we listen to something, some information on the news, or it's broadcast by a friend or a relative or a loved one or a work colleague, rather than accepting it as being the authority on that news or information, simply consider it to be part of the jigsaw puzzle. And don't respond to it until you feel that you've got all the parts of the jigsaw puzzle. It's very likely that you'll never get all of the parts, or maybe even only ever get the half of the parts of the jigsaw. So in that instance, if you never get all the parts, all the pieces, and you only get a certain number, then you can consider that nobody really knows the truth at all, and that nobody knows enough to create the overall truth. And so any discussions from any side can be ignored as being background noise. So use your intuition to assimilate the knowledge rather than focus on it. And when you feel you have enough information to make an educated understanding without having an allegiance or a preference, but simply an observation, just make a note of it. And rather than broadcasting it, just know that that's part of the reality around you, that's happening around you, but not attracting you to join in with it. Staying distanced is not being aloof, it's not being unresponsible or complacent, it's simply being conservative and thoughtful. It's being mindful. Mindfulness is all about considering everything from start to finish, and before the start and after the finish. So being mindful about the possibility of more information coming for anything, or any piece of news you might be exposed to by family, friends, or any loved ones, or any news media. Just simply think of it as being part of a jigsaw puzzle, and that someday you might finish the jigsaw puzzle, but on another day you might not. And so until you can finish the jigsaw puzzle, just consider it as being background information that is incomplete and therefore not showing the total picture. So experiencing this ability to see the bigger picture, or being allowed to see the potential that the bigger picture is much bigger than we expect, and there's more information to create the understanding surrounding the bigger picture rather than one particular side or another side. That there's potentially multiple sides to create the truth behind the information. You can now be detached, but whilst being responsible for your actions as well. Continue to navigate in this environment, whilst navigating around the potential for being attracted to limiting information or limited information. Electing instead to wait until all the information is presented to you before you consider that you understand what the picture is about. And so slowly descend back into the earth level, into your crowd of people in your auditorium or football field, and then let the football field or the auditorium dissolve so that you're back in your room. And then slowly come back into the room and slowly open your eyes and take a drink of water to help ground you. Thank you very much for listening to this meditation and electing to take the neutral posture, the spiritual posture of wanting to know more before making a judgment, or in fact, never making a judgment, but just being aware of the many sides to the information and maybe many pieces to the information, and that the information may never be whole. I'd like to offer my season's greetings to you all and God's love to you all, and look forward to working with you all in 2024. Namaste. Did you see the aliens in Crete?